change, incredible breakthrough. I just came from starting the year off right in Phoenix, which was probably 2,500 people there. It was just a large gathering where people from 75 cities in Arizona came with delegations. 18 states from that region came. Now, hear what I'm saying to you. People are hungry for the shift God's bringing. Our faith is not in a man. Our faith is in the man. Our faith is in the man who is seated at the right hand of the Father, making intercessions for us, causing us to be shifted in to what he has determined for us to be in days ahead. And so, Robert has been moving in a series on manifestation, and now today it's about favor. We have to understand this is a year of favor. And so, let me show you a couple of pictures here. See, that's favor. I mean, the Lord's, if we would have had to take up a collection to get this team to DC to be a part of the shift, it would be amazing. There's James and Robin having a good time. And James singing at the Christian inaugural gala. I mean, just amazing the favor God has to give a person to get them in place. There's the rest of the team that we sent from New Jersey. There's reasons that each one of these people went. I mean, Dutch said, "Why didn't you go?" I said, "Well, first of all, I have been in intercession for 8 years. God didn't ask me to end that intercession there. He asked me to end the intercession in my office before I flew to Arizona. And I knew who needed to represent us there. I knew my role was to make sure they all got there. Now, seriously, that's how that works. You have to know your role in every situation so that you know when to decrease and others increase. And there are reasons they had to be there because of people they know that are there to realign and reconnect us into the future. Now, so this becomes a great new year for us to move into. 2017, the number 17 means triumph. Look at somebody and say triumph. Look at somebody and say, it is time for you to move forward in the new. See, here's the thing about a change of power that occurs. It starts in heaven, it manifests on earth, and you have to choose how you're going to move in it. I mean, you can riot. I mean, we're free to do that. Don't overly try to make everybody move the same way you move into the new. Just look at somebody and say, you got to get in the new some way. But how you choose to get into the new is how you will cause this season to manifest for you. I'm going to say that again. How you choose to get into the new is how you'll cause this season to manifest for you. Now that's key for you to understand that. So it's your choice. I love the family that has the dog that comes up here. They said last Sunday they were listening to the message and the Lord said, you take your last $20 and you give in up here. And you watch what I do in your life. They said that was Sunday. They had a zero. And they said on Monday, unexpectedly, they got a call and someone brought them $7,000. Now, hear what I'm saying to you. You choose how you're going to move into the new. Ooh, you might have to go up a notch. You choose on how you're going to move into the new. I looked at James and Robin celebrating up in D.C. They weren't there trying to change the political world. They were there celebrating because God had favored them to be there, and they knew there was a portal of God over them, and their role was to bring God in with them. I chose that when the Lord told me in 2005 President Obama would be president. An African American would be president, and then when President Obama came on the scene, I chose to go into the new. I didn't complain. I didn't gripe. I didn't get under some bog over what I liked and didn't, because my background has so much Black American influence in it that I knew there would be some sort of healing we would receive in my bloodline if I'd get behind what God was doing. You have to make choices to get in to what God is doing during a season. You have to move. Joseph had to choose to go to Bethlehem for the census because the government shifted. But when he did that, he fulfilled prophecy. And all of a sudden, the portal of heaven opened over him, and the star appeared where God wanted the star to appear. Look at somebody and say, I'm looking for the star this season. Now, here's the issue. People say, why don't y'all talk about what's going on this year? And you start talking about it 8 years prior, and you prophesy into the future. Because you have to hear and decree God's present truth today so it unlocks where you're going in days ahead. You keep living in history, you will be in history. Now, hear what I'm saying to you. I love history. My wife is a history buff. I love history. We excelled in understanding history. We do well in Jeopardy on history questions, both of us. But I don't live in history. I prophesy the present truth so I can make history. Look at somebody. Say, you can live in history or you can make history. Now, this is what the year looks like. You can read your Bible as a historical document, or you can read it because you need to use it to cut your way into the future. That's your choice. You can say it all ended at 400 BC. Why read it at 400 AD? Why read it if it all ended? That makes no sense to me. Let me say this. I read To Kill a Mockingbird every year because it's for today, just as it was then. Some of us need to understand the written word becomes life and transcends time and into the future. And the Word of God is the living Word. It's not just the written Word. It's alive. Now, this is what the year looks like. It's a sword. It's a mantle. It's a granted precipice that we've got to get through. I mean, things didn't change overnight, but something started. But today, what I want to work with us over is the crown. Look at somebody and say, be the crown. Long for the crown. Go home, watch Miss Congeniality. Some of you need to have that's the best movie right now you can watch on a change of identity. You can live under the law, you can have all sorts of problems, or you can transform and have all sorts of problems, but at least be recognized in a new way. Now, here's what I want to say to us. This is a time to feel the weight of His glory like a mantle on you. I'm not talking about just around us. I'm talking about on you. I'm talking about you wearing something that you've never worn before in a season. Understanding how to put it on. Some of you don't know how to put it on, what you need to put on for this season. Therefore, you're still wearing either the traces of last season, the identity of last season, or the garment of last season. I told Shatise today, I said, that which you have on looks like the new you. See, I watch for people as they make their shift into who they are for this season. I watch them as they transform. Brian Losi wrote me and he said, we can't wear last season's shirt at this season's nationals. I said, you're absolutely right. So take up a collection from all of them. I don't want to wear last season's shirt. Joseph said, but be sure to put on my shirt that I bowled 255 last season. I mean, all those high-powered bowlers, and Joseph had the highest score of all of our group that we were with. Now, you've got to have your new season of triumph mantle wearing on you. Now, here's something else. You need to say this to somebody. This is a year of fulfillment. And it's a year to prosper. It's a year of gold. It's a year of abundance. He's getting so much better. I just turn around and cut my eye and he goes for it now. Look at him. Let's thank God. Chad's come a long way into a new identity. Jennifer has been a big help getting him there. It's a year of Zebulun. Now I'm going to say this. It's a year of glory, but it's also a year of getting new supply and money. Everybody say money. Elaine, you need to shout, I need some money.
Money, money, money. Money, money.
Now, hear what I'm saying to you. And we're not here to try to get yours. I never have been. I want you to only give to God what He wants you to bring to Him, because I know if He tells you to bring it, it's going to multiply on you and you're going to bring something else. We were asked about Doris's van. I said 11,000 came in. It costs 40. We're doing the rest of it. She needs to keep moving. Load her up. Now hear what I'm saying to you. You got to keep going. There's somebody on your path to help you keep going. Now, but in this, we're being positioned this year. Look at the seat you're sitting on. Pat it and say, Lord, thank you for my new seat. Thank you for my new position. Start thanking Him for your new position. Some of you will retire and refire. Some of you will get promoted. Some of you will be lifted up. Some of you are going into places you ain't ever been before. Because what's He doing with us? Put all those up, Brian, and let's look at them. You're being positioned because if it's a year of fulfillment, you're going to have to complete what was destined and postponed in the last season. You need to make a list of everything that got postponed around your life. You need to make a list where you got blocked from going somewhere. You need to make a list of how that mess you got in stopped you from moving forward and postponed a new level of favor for you. But say, Lord, I'm going to reconcile that and move on. Look at somebody and say, cut your losses and move it on. We're being positioned for desperate change. Sometimes I hear the worship, and I hear when a desperation comes through it. I hear when we're just trying to bless God. But there's a desperation this year. We're being positioned for war and overthrow of old decrees. See, we're being positioned to save those who are destined for destruction. God's going to start opening your eyes to people around you and say, they're going to hell. Why you think I put you there? I try to look at everybody around me. First of all, to see if somebody's got a gun or if God wants me to lead them into Him. And if they've got a gun, that's the first thing I want to say. Jesus got His eye on you. Now hear me. We've got to get bold and get our mouth open because we're being positioned for breakthrough. We're being positioned to exhibit faith. And it's because God's ready to expand us. Remember that year we prayed the prayer of Jabez? I mean, everybody, most sold book that year. Secular or Christian. And how we prayed that God would enlarge us. That prayer is for now. Just like what God said to James in September was for now. What God showed Marty 20 years ago is for now. There's something over your life then that is for now. Now here's something else. God is really saying this to me. And we're going to focus on it until we get it. We'll work with us until we get it. It's time to experience and recognize the new cycle of favor over your life. Look at somebody and say, favor is hanging over the top of your head. If you don't get anything this year, you need to get this. Because this is what will redirect your life into the places God's sending you. Some of you do not recognize how favored you are. I asked the Lord, I said, remind me of the first time I recognized I was favored. I saw it immediately. It was in the 4th grade when the superintendents of schools in a big assembly called me up on stage. And he said, what's your name? I said, Chuck. He said, but what's your real name? I said, Charles Daniel Pierce. He said, when you go to Washington, D.C., use the meaning of that name. That was in the 4th grade. In front of a whole school. And I recognized, it sort of dawned on me later on when I got home. And my mother asked me, did anything go on in school today? And I said, I got up in front of the whole school. And I told her what was said. She said, then when you go to Washington, D.C., you need to manifest what your name means. See, my name, they named me what God wanted me to be named. My mother, my dad, and then brawled about it. Got in knockdown dragouts over it and then settled on calling me Chuck. And it was like that broke off of it. Love the name Chuck. Chunky Chuck. Now, Pam. But y'all do notice I've lost a little weight. I'm having to tighten the belt up. I love it. It's not because I'm on a diet either. It's because I'm going too much. Now, look at somebody and say, receive favor. I asked the Lord all during the night. I stayed up most of the night. And I asked the Lord, I said, what's the issue with this? He said, they don't even know what favor is. You're going to have to explain what favor is for them to get favor. Look at somebody and say, he wants you to get favor.
He wants you to get favor.
Now, this is the first thing I want to say before we get going on this. Grace and favor are a necessary handshake for triumph. You have to have both of them shaking hands to produce triumph in your life. Triumph means you play the trump card, you have an attitude, you move forward, and in every situation you're in, you have something in you that makes you want to win the war around you. But it takes grace and favor, and they're not the same thing. They're handshake together. And I think that's why, because it's the number one question I'm asked is, why didn't this happen for me? Why can't I break through? It takes grace and favor to break through. See, grace is favor or kindness without, everybody say without. Without regard of how good you are. Without regard of what you deserve. Grace is just there for you. You don't have to do anything to get it. You can't work your way into grace. This is what happens with so many people. They just think if they'll just do everything right, they'll get it. You can't get there just doing everything right. Because I'm going to be real honest with you. You can't do everything right. When I got ready to do my message this morning, Chad had left my computer totally unplugged and it was dead. And so I had to come up here instead of stay at home to do it early. You can't do everything right. But I still extended grace to you. Much grace.
Somebody shout grace! Hallelujah!
This is almost a daily issue. I know grace. I know how to give it out. Brian, one time, I looked at him, I said, what in the world is wrong with you? He said, I'm just afraid I'm going to make a mistake. I said, you've made 11 already today. One more is not going to take us under. Receive grace even if you make a mistake. Now, remember Dutch's message on mercy. Grace is mercy being extended to deliver us out of distress. All you have to do in the midst of your distress is scream. You don't have to make sense. God doesn't just speak English, people. Just scream to the top of your lungs.
Scream!
I try to watch God moving in grace around people. Grace, a good picture of it is the Hebrew people. When all of a sudden, after 400 years, it's time. Everybody say time.
Time.
It's time for him to fulfill the word he gave to Abraham. So he starts gathering them up and he redeems them out of Egypt and puts them over moving toward their promise. Look at somebody and say, I got grace to move forward. Now hear what I just told you. Grace didn't give them their promise. Grace got them moving toward their promise. Do you get that? A lot of people think God's just going to give them everything they need. God ain't going to do anything that you're supposed to be doing. He got them moving toward their promise by grace. He bought them out of the hand of Egypt. Grace can be yours to get you moving toward your promise, but it also can only be yours through salvation. You're going to have to say, God, I need to be saved out of me. I mean, I look at people all week long saying, God, if you just save them out of them, they could get moving toward what you have planned for them. Salvation gets you moving out of you. That's how it begins. That's grace. Now let's look at favor. What's favor then? Favor comes because you take that grace you've been given and all of a sudden something's required of you by the Lord and you obey. And all of a sudden something rests down on you. Let's take James again. I called him in the office. I said, do you want to represent us in Washington, D.C.? Since God said that about you, then it becomes his choice. If he doesn't want the favor, we don't have to give it to him. He could say, no, I'd rather stay home. No, Robin and I had a big thing last night, so we'll just pass on by. That ain't how you get it. He and Robin will probably have a big thing next month. But that's not how you walk in favor. They'll have grace to get through the big thing they have to walk through, but they're choosing to wear their favor where God's sending them to wear it. See, some of you get up so mean every morning and so tired and so bogged down and so I don't want to every morning. There ain't no way to get any favor on you. So what you're wearing that which hasn't manifested for you, and all of a sudden the spirit of I don't want to is all around you. That's not favor. I know it when people walk in my office. I look at some of them and say, you might as well stay home today. Let me just make sure we don't pay you, go back home. Because faith releases provision. Favor releases provision. Go back home and wear that. Go out there and try to get into another place wearing that. See what happens with you. Because who that would own a company would want you to bring what you're wearing in there? Yeah, you're saved. But when you get to heaven, God's going to ask you, why'd you wear that the whole time you were in the earth realm? Why did you dress up with that rather than dress in what I wanted to give you? We're going to have to answer these things, people. If you think this is it, it's not it. I think that's what I saw with my mother, Keith, with our mother. That last 2 weeks of her life, she didn't drink a drop of water. She didn't eat a bite. And favor was all over. It was favor because she was working out things with God so she could meet him and say, I worked it out before I got here. Favor, now here's what some of you don't get. Favor is extended to you from another source. You ain't going to get it yourself. Either God's going to have to give you favor, or somebody's going to have to recognize your gift, make room for it, and then extend it to you. You can't get it any other way. Look through the Word of God. It's what caused Joseph all of his problems. Jacob extended the favor of the multicolored mantle, coat, and all of a sudden his brother said, we'll rip that favor off of him. You can't get it yourself. And here's an awesome dynamic. It can come to you from both heaven and the earth realm. Because some of you think it's just between you and God. That isn't how Jesus walked. He gained stature with man and with the Father. He knew how he had to walk to gain stature with man. He had to become the best rabbi for other rabbis to listen to him. He had to become better than the Pharisees, so the Pharisees would even sneak in by night to hear him because of the favor from the Father he wore. And then they extended favor to him. See, favor comes, and this is what this whole season is about, Robert, and I'm not sure we've broken into this yet, because remember, the season of 70 is the season of Ion, where the eye of God shines on us. That's what favor is. Favor is where an eye looks at you and shines on you. I can remember another instance in my life. I had gotten right with the Lord, and I went and sat at the back of the largest church in the city that we lived in. And one of the professors from college was in the choir, and the next Monday she found me on campus and said, you were shining back there, and I felt like my eyes were connected with the shine that was on you. That's favor. I also made an A in her class. Because it motivated me to keep her eyes shining on me. Does that make sense? Some of you act like such fools around people. All of a sudden, they just turn and go the other way when you're coming up. Now, that's for all of us here. Young people, you need to hear this. You need to get this message. The last portion of the Shabbat blessing is, Lord, favor us. Shine your eye down on us every Shabbat. You should ask that. Therefore, when you start the next week, you're starting with favor. Favor has a positioning. Favor also has to be received by you. You can reject it. I have looked at certain people and say, you look awesome, and they say, I don't say that. I don't feel awesome. I say, reject it then. You look like... My God, I'll just take it back. Now hear what I'm saying to you. You have to receive favor. Honor must be reciprocated to maintain favor. You're not going to maintain favor if you don't honor. Peter Wagner gave me favor in 1990. His favor on me has taken me and made me known worldwide. Therefore, till the day he died and to today, I reciprocate that favor back to him and his family. You got to understand that. You're not going to keep your favor if you don't honor the source of where it's coming from. Favor comes with those who have authority to release it upon you. The centurion soldier, he's a leader, but he doesn't need favor from his nation. His favorite servant is sick and dying. I mean, I'm thinking today about Brian Coleman's birthday. Let's thank God for Brian Coleman. Listen, if something started happening to him, I would fall on my face before God. I'd go wherever it took me to go. Because, yeah, I know. It would bring Pam into intercession. Because Brian helps me. He knows how to help me. He types faster than I can talk. I went in on the January the 1st, and I looked at him and I said, let me tell you something. I told the Lord this morning what an honor it is that he put you in my life. There is no way I could be who I am if he hadn't put you in my life. He said, that's probably the most incredible thing you've ever said to me. I said, it can only go downhill the rest of the year. So get prepared. Authority releases favor. And so what he said to the Lord, he said, Lord, my servant's sick. Would you come? This guy wasn't even a Jew. He said, would you come and heal him? And the Lord said, I see that you're a man in authority. You understand authority. No greater faith in all of Israel works in a person with greatest faith. I haven't seen anybody that understands authority like you. Therefore, I'm sending not only favor on you, I'm sending it straight. Your servant's healed. Are you aware how we can move God? And here's the other thing. Favor can be released by you. Some of you never release favor. Therefore, you don't get favor. You don't release it to your coworkers. You don't release it to people you meet. You don't release it to your family. Therefore, you don't get it. Very seldom do I ever receive anything that I don't share. As a matter of fact, I can't think of anything I receive I don't share. Because I want to take the favor of receiving it and release a portion to others. Therefore, I know it'll come back to me in a new way. See, favor and grace must handshake. Just like religion and infirmity handshake. And why we can't break through infirmity is because there's such a strong handshake and we don't have a greater handshake. The Lord told me that a long time ago. You can ask Pam. It was in like 1982 when God told me there's lots of things I can't do because of my body. When I watched a young man die that I knew the Lord wanted to raise up. And I said, why, Lord? And the Lord said, there's lots of things I can't do. And it says it right there in Corinthians. Are you aware of that? It says lots of us are sick because of the communion we're in. We don't have the favor to heal the sick. We don't have the favor to do certain miracles. But I am here to announce to you starting today, God's shifting this environment. Now, this is what God showed me about this election. Because, my goodness, what a wild year we've been in. Look at somebody and say, woo. I'm afraid it's just started, though. But we just keep going. Old structures resist favor. Old structures resist celebration. I watched it with all those. I want to tell you what, I got down on my knees. I thank God for Hillary and Bill because they stood there. After that defeat. That's how you get defeat off of you. You get in the presence of triumph. I didn't have a bunch of things in my heart toward her. I said, she's standing there. Because there's 60 other that have decided not to. Therefore, you watch what happens in their life. You know the pain Michelle Obama had. She's leaving the home she's had for 8 years. I mean, I've watched it with my own wife when we've had to do that. But she stood there. George Bush couldn't stand Mr. Trump. But he stood there. That's how you move into the new. Now, hear what I'm saying to you, people. Mr. Obama had the Spirit of God on him. For the first time, I didn't always see it on him during the 8 years. He had it on him up there. Listen, people, we're called to discern by the Spirit. You get out of defeat by getting under favor. Say it out loud. Coming from defeat to favor. Let me go on to the next thing. Now, there is a path for you this year like never before. But you're going to have to recognize who and what is on your path. You're going to have to find it. Will you, here's the question for us now. Will you be favored and experience fullness? You're going to have to ask that. You're going to have to take that before the Lord. You're going to have to say, Lord, is this the number one desire of my life? I would rather be favored by you. Had it not been for the Lord. We're going to sing that at the end. Had it not been for the Lord. And without it, you can't find your path. We were in Korea. We had a huge breakthrough. It was not easy. Was not an easy breakthrough. There has been nothing easy this year. Nothing. Can't think of one service, one flight. Nothing has been easy. Finally, I said, James, you have a song for here, and it's the only way they're going to break through. And I said, I don't know how you're going to get positioned in it. I just finally said, I'm going to have to leave that to you. I did my part. I said, I'm excited James Vincent is with me. Maybe he'll sing while he's here. I did my part. I said, but I don't know how you're going to work this. And you know, the language there is one of the worst nations to try to maneuver through. You think after we went to war there, and you think with the American president, they do not speak English in Korea. I can maneuver through Japan, through China. Korea is difficult. So you've got to have your spirit man working. And so Saturday night, we had Friday night, we had the last service. And all of a sudden, James had found his way up. And the team was backing him. And you know, they do everything in perfection. They didn't know the song that he wrote in Korea the last time we came. He had never sang it there. Then the Spirit of God broke through. I mean, broke through. The message broke through. I had them moving in a whole new thing. Remember? Ooh, it was wild. The giving. They were behind $120,000 in this meeting. And they said, you have to do something. I thought, I'm the guest. I mean, it sounds like my kids. I thought, my Lord, you brought me here. God broke through, brought it all in. I mean, God broke it through. God broke it through the next morning. Then this lady came up and said, when do you go to the airport? I said, we're leaving as soon as I finish speaking. It was during worship in the first service. She said, well, perhaps I will come by the airport to see you off. And I thought, how is that going to work? You know, they throw us out, we get out, we run, we catch planes. But this time they got us to the airport. We had 2 hours to spare. So James and Chad and I said, let's go eat somewhere. I mean, when you don't know what else to do, just eat. So we walked Seoul has one of the top airports in the entire world. So we walked down this incredible row of restaurants. On the outside before you go through security, we walked, we saw all of them. Then we chose to go to a Chinese restaurant in Korea. But we sat down and James and Chad, you know, they're New Orleans boys. They know how to eat. And they said, we don't see anything that really excites us. So I ordered an appetizer just to honor the people there and to thank them for letting us sit there. So we ate the appetizer. And then Chad said, well, the Korean restaurant's right down here. Let's go down there. We went down there. We walked up, walked in. It was packed. And I said, we have 3. And the lady stopped and looked at me. I think really it is because of my white hair. Now, I'm being serious. That's a favor in Asian nations. She said, we have 1 table. So we just followed her right in past a couple of other people. And followed her right in. And she took us to the 1 vacant table. Next to that 1 vacant table, in that table was the lady who wanted to see me. Only God can do stuff like that. Only God can do that in a 10 million populated city in one of the biggest airports of the world, take you to the person you need to go to. And all she did was pull out a purse and hand it to me and say, "This is for you." Your provision is waiting on you if you will go with favor. Because they didn't have it to give us anything when we left there. They hadn't reconciled anything. God had just broken through with us to get them anything to pay their bills. She said, "This is for you. And your wife," she said. And I thought, well, my first thought was, this has been such a hard year so far. I'm going to start working in the garden. Pam's going to start traveling. But when I said it, John Mark said, "You would last maybe an hour out in the garden." So we're just going to stick in what we're favored to do. You see what I'm saying? Now, let me say this to you. There is a path of prosperity for you this year. But you're going to have to walk it. You're going to have to move with it. You're going to have to find your way through it. Look at somebody and say, "I'm finding my way on that path." There is a path of prosperity for you, and you, and you, and you, and you. And you're going to have to find your way on it. Now, Robin said, God showed her they were at table 23. Let me go over Psalms 23 one more time with you. But this time we're all going to decree it. She didn't know I was going to do this today. God is saying, that's what he was saying to them in D.C. I'll set you at the table of prosperity. Say this out loud. I will comfort you in distress and affliction. This is God prophesying to you. I will guide you out of lack. This is what Psalms 23 is about. I will lead you in a path of righteousness for my name's sake. Not so you can look at everybody and say, "Look how good I am." Listen, that good ain't gonna get it. I will cause you, what this word means, I will cause you to go around in a new cycle. I will guide you in the cycle of my righteousness. Say it out loud. It means this: if you'll return and feast with me, I'll make a new cycle for you. Say, "Lord, here I am." Say, "I'm coming." And finally, Robin said it. I will lead you properly. Say, properly. You will prosper and not lack. Tell somebody next to you. Do you know what this means? You know what Psalm 23 says? Your enemies will favor you. It's not just about God favoring you. It's not just about man favoring you. Your enemies will favor you. Now finally, this is what I want to say. Here's what I saw during this election. We've entered into this Esther season. It's an Esther season. You need to watch through March. March 15th. Now hear my word to you. You need to watch through March 15th how you move in favor. Because what Esther was about was, I'll raise up some triumphant ones that's willing to go forth on the path ahead. Say, I have a path of prosperity. I have a path of favor. Lord, I'm willing to go ahead on that path. It's about a time to be positioned so, for some reason, God is doing something in your life right now that you're not aware of, that He's trying to position you in favor over. I come in early here. I watch who cleans the bathrooms. God's doing something in your life right now to favor you. Start being aware that there is something going on around you. Just like it was, she didn't know why she was there. She was just pretty. Pretty is a good start. But that ain't going to always last. So if you are pretty, take that and walk with it. Because that's a favor. And I always say pretty is that as pretty does. I have watched my daughter choose not to be in the same sphere that I'm in ministry, and I've watched God favor her in the sphere she's been put in. She's had to make choices to receive that favor. Here's the last thing. See, Esther was in the world, but there was something about her that wasn't of the world, but the world favored her. And this is what I want to end up saying to you. Don't be afraid of the world. It can favor you. We're in a season right now where the world is shifting toward God's kingdom people. The world can favor you. The Bible shows us that. Joseph was favored by the world. Daniel was favored by the world. Esther was favored by the world. Nehemiah was favored by the world. And then finally, favor can be extended to you. See, the only thing that happened with Vashti was she said, I'm not going into this next season. Because in that first chapter has a phrase linked with the Issachar anointing. It was a time for the kingdom to shift. She chose not to shift in time. She had a choice to shift in time. She was a beautiful woman. She had a choice to shift in time. But when she didn't shift, someone else did. Now let me end by saying this. We are in a shifting time. If you don't choose to shift, somebody else will. If you don't choose to break through into what God has for you in this new season, somebody else will. And when Esther shifted, now here, this is what I want to say to you. She had favor from the king for an entire year to overthrow everything against her. That's our choice today. If you make a choice today to shift, you might have to re-listen to this 3 or 4 times. You make a choice. I'm going to ask some of our worshipers to come up here. We're going to sing that song, Had It Not Been for the Lord. On my side. If you choose to shift today, you'll be shifted for a whole, you will have favor to be in a whole new place in the year ahead. God will put a year mantle of favor on you today. Let's stand up. That's even for you if you're sick here. If you're listening out there and you're in a hard place, today God can put a new mantle of favor to rest on you for a whole year. He did it for Esther. He can do it for you. He can extend your life for a year today. It's your birthday. She looks like an Esther. Let's wait. Let's thank God for Catherine. You see, I pretty well know what's going on with most of you here. God says, Catherine, you're going to have greater favor this year than you've had in all the other 69 years put together. The Lord says, step into your 70th, beginning of your 70th year of favor, and all captivity will break off of you. Look at somebody and say, I hope I look that good when I'm stepping into my 70th year. Lord, we ask you right now. We want this. We want it. We couldn't even be here today had it not been for you. Had it not been for you getting us here. Put your hand on somebody and say, this is the beginning of your next year of favor. Point at the well, say, this begins a year of favor for you. Let's worship him. Let's worship him.
And had it not been for the Lord who was on our side, oh, let it just say, had it not been for the Lord who was on our side.
Tell somebody, had it not been for him, I couldn't step into the next dimension of favor.
For the Lord who was on our side. Oh, had it not been for the Lord who was on our side. Oh, when men rose against us, raging wave pressed our soul.
Hear this.
And a snare was set.
Turn, pray with somebody. Say, this is your year of favor.
Oh, had it been for the Lord who was on our side.
Say, he's on your side. He's going to lead you in. He's going to use you in new ways. The path of prosperity is before you. Lord, I bless this people. I bless this sphere of authority with a new favor to advance.
Had it not been for the Lord who was on our side. Yeah. when men rose against us.